Welcome to Rick's Corner. I've got an interesting story to tell. All of you go to gyms. You all know what it's like. There's all kinds of characters that come in there. I'm sure you have 3 or 4 or 5 or maybe even more in your gym that you see every day. They have their own little funny routine, the little funny way they dress, the funny way they are about them, and they're unique. But back in the 70s, we had some real characters. And Joe Gold would peg every one of them, and he'd give them nicknames. And he had his own little names he gave, and they caught on, and pretty soon everybody called him by that name. Seymour was a wrestler, a very nice-looking guy. He did Three Stooges, Meet Hercules. He was a bodybuilder. He was a wrestler, and he became a chiropractor. But he was always late to everything Joe had. No matter what, he was always late. So Joe nicknamed him the Snail. When they talked about the Snail, that was Seymour. Zabel had the most amazing abs, was very well known for his abs. And he would run the gym when Joe wasn't there, and he called him the Chief. And Zabel would sit by the front door doing crossword puzzles, and if somebody came in and he was busy, he wouldn't talk to them. They'd come back later. If the phone would ring, he'd be taking a nap, he wouldn't answer the phone. He said, they'll call back. He had a barber's chair in the office sitting by the phone, which Joe gave him where he could recline in and take his naps. He was just a really laid-back guy. And he was really funny, but he was called the Chief. And he passed away about a year or two ago, and I'm really sorry. He was a wonderful human being. Chuck Colress was a little short bodybuilder. Called him the Gopher because he looked like a gopher. And he would pose at a drop of the hat. We all went to a wedding. He dropped his clothes, stood on the table, and started posing. Real egomaniac. Great guy, but had to pose for people no matter where he was. It could be in the middle of a restaurant. He'd rip his shirt off. These were characters. These were real characters. There was a guy named Bugsy. It wasn't his real name, but we called him Bugsy Siegel, like the gangster. Thick, wild, crazy hair, big belly, drove a Cadillac convertible, would drink vodka and milk in a carton in the back of his trunk before he'd train. He'd come in the gym and do bench presses right off the bat and try to lift as much as he could, but he did the one-arm thing where one arm goes up at a time, then the other arm was fighting to get the weight up. He was really unique. He would pick on everybody there, but we had a lot of fun with that guy. Then there was Bug-Eyed Louie. He had bug eyes, and Joe called him Bug-Eyed Louie. And he was into watches. He loved watches. The minute he'd meet you, he looked at your wrist to see what kind of watch you had. He had to analyze it right away. He was another one that did the bench presses with Bugsy. The two of them were nuts. Then you had Yogi. Yogi was a German guy that wore a black T-shirt, black shorts, black high-top boots, and a black military cap. And he was nuts. And he was also... I'm pretty sure he had some sexual issues because he talked about going down to the Marine base and having sex with 150 guys on one day. Then we had Steve Neese, who's passed away a few years back, who was a guy about 6'5", wore thick dark glasses, had a big lat spread, and no hips. So in order to make it look like he had a butt, he wore 2 wallets in his pants because it made his butt stick out farther. And he was so uncoordinated, he'd sit on the edge of the bench, and he'd always be picking his nose and looking at it, and he'd fall off the bench. We called him Moby Dick. That was his nickname. And he decided he wanted to go into wrestling. He went up and trained with Stu Hart. Ran the ropes a couple of times, couldn't tie his shoelaces, tripped over his own feet, and got out of the business. He passed away a few years back. He wrote articles for some of the muscle magazines. We had Heidi. Heidi was a German girl. She was one of the first ones at the beach with big boobs in a bikini and a huge dog. And her and the dog, we weren't too sure about what was going on, but we thought there were issues, and maybe she had a relationship with that dog. Arnold liked her. Everybody liked her. She was fun. And from right here, she's still around Venice Beach today. She must be about my age, in her 60s by now, and still looks pretty decent. Then we had, we had Mike Katz who would come out. Mike was a wonderful guy, really nice guy. But he was so stiff when he'd walk, and when he'd sit, he looked like Frankenstein. So I nicknamed him Frankenstein. I told all he needed was 2 bolts in his neck. We'd go to the beach, we'd be laying on the sand, and some girl would walk by, and we'd all get up to look, and he'd get up very stiff and turn as if it was Frankenstein. And he had the bangs and everything. Funny situation. Then we had Dr. Jaycott. Dr. Jaycott was a pediatrician, but he had a thing for big guys. He was a short guy. And he'd hang around the gyms looking at all the big guys along with Dr. Walzak. And Dr. Walzak was also a doctor who gave the guys steroids, and he was into men as well as Jaycott. And they would come to all the bodybuilding shows, and they'd befriend certain guys and take care of them with their drugs, whatever they needed. And Jaycott was a pediatrician. What was funny about him is that if you wanted anything at all from him, and you went to his office over in Hollywood, You'd walk in there, and one side of the room would be lined up moms with kids, and the other side of the room would be all bodybuilders. Complete conflict of what was going on. But it worked. And then I think he got arrested years later for selling steroids or giving them out, or something happened, and they left the face of the map. But these were characters. These were really characters. There's a whole lot more probably that I've forgotten throughout the years. There was Einar the plumber with the silver tooth with a big belly. That was Joe's buddy, and he kicked him out of the gym because he said he was cruel to his dog. There was Ken Sprague, who bought the gym. Ken made a lot of money in the porno business, doing gay porno films. And he had a man behind him who looked almost like it could be his dad, we called the Doc Larson, who made educational films for kids, which was a far cry from what Ken was doing on the flip side of the films. But they bought the gym, and Doc put a lot of the money up, and Ken was married at the time, and he and his wife put the gym on the map by running shows, and they were sponsored by Gold's Gym, of course, and they did a very good job of doing that. And then they decided to shoot an actual real film and put a lot of money into it, and I don't think it went anywhere. I think that was just a one-shot deal, and that was the end of it. But we called Ken the cowboy. You know, how are you, with the big old handshake and the big toothy grin and the blonde hair. And that was his nickname, the cowboy. Me, they called the Sun-Kissed Kid, I guess because of Rick Drasin sounding like Raisin, and they figured raisins and sun-kissed, well, that would be the Sun-Kissed Kid. I don't know how that got that way, but they called me that for a short period of time. Then there was Bob Schott. Bob Schott didn't really have a nickname. He was a very nice guy, very strange, tall, blonde hair, and he would come in the gym and he would tie his pants with a tie, and he'd go over to the water fountain and he'd do some crazy thing with spitting in the air and taking the water in, and then he went outside and he would pound the wall with his fist because he said he was learning karate, so he would be hitting the bricks with the side of his hand for hours upon end. Nobody knew why. He had no formal training. And then he disappeared for a long period of time. And then he decided he wanted to be like Superstar Graham. And so he bought a Cadillac, and he'd sit in the middle of the seat with his arm on the console, eating bananas all day round, driving around the gym. I don't want to leave this person out because I've mentioned him before, but I had to mention him again. And we called him the Missing Link, David Carter. He had a very funny voice, like he was out of breath. And he rode a motorcycle with one peg, which I had mentioned, riding down the freeway with one leg dangling on the freeway, kicking up in the air because it wouldn't sit on a motorcycle peg, in his shorts, came in the gym, pair of shorts, no shirt, no shoes, loaded 400 pounds on the bar, and immediately squatted it for 10 reps. Just blew Arnold away. How this guy could do that without warm-up and be so strong. But he was. And he's the same guy that I mentioned when Bill Grant was here about the man who was eating chicken, and I was at his house, and it was frying on a pan with the lid on top, no seasoning, pulled it out, started eating it, eating the bones and all, and crunching away. I'm saying the bone marrow is really good for you. These were weird guys, but he was the missing link. We just said that's what he's called, and Joe agreed that's what. It'd be fun to tell you about these guys. I don't have photos of them. I wish I did. We didn't take a lot back then. I might have one or two I might be able to pop up here, and I don't have any videos because video cameras weren't even in then. But also, I forgot to mention Tommy Chong from Cheech and Chong trained with us. Great guy. And he's exactly like you see him in the movies, real laid back. In fact, he loaned me a video camera to shoot my video of my son when he was born so that I could have some video on him. But these were good times, and these were fun guys that you'll never see again because they're very unique, and some of them have passed away, unfortunately. But I wished I could share the photos, but we just don't have them. I looked around, I've called around, I've done research. It's just not possible. But I hope you enjoy this because I'm sure you have the same sort of characters in your gym. And if you do, get photos of them. Document who they are because you might never see anybody like that again. And thank you for watching Rick's Corner because I have something coming up. It won't be for a few weeks. I shot the Cher show. Cher Bono had a variety show in 1975. I was on the show with Jim Morris, Bill Grant, and Don Peters. And I was just asked to do an article for a book they're doing on Cher, my views of the show, and what I thought of her and how I liked the show and what we did on it. And I'm getting a video of it from 1975, which I haven't seen since 1975, and I'm going to share that on Rick's Corner with all of us in action on stage for CBS. So stay tuned. I'll have it for you shortly, and please watch Rick's Corner more and pass the word around. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.